Statements by ministries. Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, before I begin, I just want to recognize the people who have worked on this legislation, Liz Harding and her team, who have joined us from the Ministry of Education. Thank you very much for their work. And Marika Bishop and Rob Coombs from my office, who have been very instrumental. And I will acknowledge my parliamentary assistant, Liz Sandals, shortly, because she has led the development of this legislation. Mr. Speaker, even one incident of bullying or harassment in our schools is unacceptable. Each one is one too many. We know these incidents can have a lasting impact on the well-being of the young people involved and on their families. Safe schools have been a government priority from the beginning when we introduced our Safe Schools strategy, and we will continue to take action to make our schools safer. We've done a lot, Mr. Speaker, but we're very aware that there is more to do, which is why last February I asked the Safe Schools Action Team to address some very sensitive and very serious issues: gender-based violence, homophobia, sexual harassment, and inappropriate sexual behaviour among students. The Safe Schools Action Team also looked at barriers students face to reporting these issues and reporting requirements for support staff. And they participated in a review of local police school board protocols. I want to very sincerely thank my colleague Liz Sandals, the member for Guelph, who is my parliamentary assistant, for so ably chairing that team in this process, previous process. So thank you very much for all of your work. Ces conclusions font réfléchir, Monsieur le Président, mais l'équipe a formulé de nombreuses recommandations fortes qui peuvent nous aider à rendre nos écoles plus sûres. Nous avons annoncé que nous leur donnerions rapidement suite et c'est le cas. We are introducing the Keeping Our Kids Safe at School Act that, if passed, would require school staff to report to the principal any serious student incidents for which suspension or expulsion must be considered. The Education Act already lays out when suspension and expulsion must be considered by the principal, such as for incidents of bullying or assault. This legislation I am introducing today would require school staff to report these activities to the principal so that the principal can respond appropriately. Principals cannot act on these behaviours if they do not know that they are happening. Mr. Speaker, we know that school staff in Ontario are committed to student safety. This legislation would help clarify the role of all school staff in reporting serious incidents. Under the existing legislation, there are clear requirements for principals on considering suspension or expulsion if students have engaged in activities spelled out in the legislation. There are also policy requirements that require principals to report specified violent incidents to the police. This legislation would ensure that school staff also have clear direction in reporting to the principal. Now, I want to be clear, Mr. Speaker, that these changes will formalise something that is already common practice in the province. Students should feel comfortable reporting incidents to staff, knowing that they will then be followed up on. And parents should feel comfortable knowing that these incidents will be responded to appropriately. Mr. Speaker, this legislation would also require principals to contact the parents of victims of student incidents when suspension or expulsion must be considered. So that same type of incident where we're going to require, if this legislation is passed, that principals must contact the parents of the victims. Parents have a right to know when their child is a victim of serious behaviour. They cannot advocate for their child and work with the school to resolve these issues if they're unaware that these types of incidents are taking place. If passed, Ontario would be the first province in Canada with legislation of this kind, requiring school staff to report serious student incidents to the principal and requiring principals to notify parents of victims. And finally, the legislation would require staff to intervene to address inappropriate and disrespectful behaviour among students, behaviour such as racist or sexist comments that are unacceptable in our schools. We would, of course, only require them to do this if it is safe to do so. This may include asking the student to stop the behaviour, identifying the type of behaviour and why it's inappropriate and disrespectful, and asking the student for a change in future behaviour. If passed, the legislation would help make schools even safer and lead the way for students to succeed. Le projet de loi sécurité de nos enfants à l'école ne constitue qu'une étape, Monsieur le Président. Nous progressons également dans nombre d'autres domaines ciblés par les recommandations de l'équipe d'action. tels que le curriculum, l'amélioration des partenariats entre les conseils scolaires et les organismes communautaires, et le développement de sondages sur le climat scolaire. And we will continue to act to help ensure everyone feels welcome, safe, and respected in all of our schools. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.